This is Fordham Conversations on 90.7 WFUV. I'm Robin Shannon. In New York City, an estimated 3,800 kids are homeless. About one-third of them identify as LGBT. And as WFUV's Sara Kugel reports, gay and lesbian youth can have a tougher time on the streets than their straight counterparts.
It's a hot evening on Manhattan's west side at Hudson River Park. A breeze comes off the water as the sun begins to set. Joggers trot along the path parallel to the river while weaving in and out of people enjoying the view. Yet as the dusk paints the sky pink, the scene changes in more ways than one. Packs of teenagers meander into the park, 4 or 5 at a time. Most black and Hispanic, some no older than 13, they roam towards the piers. They carry plastic bags filled with clothes. They congregate, circling around tables or sitting cross-legged on the ground, looking out towards the water. Some clusters play music and take turns watching each other dance. Another group, not so subtly, pours vodka into plastic red cups. Others sit in a circle, talking while passing around a joint. By 10 o'clock, at least 50 teenagers are nestled about the pier. Here we met a 17-year-old girl named Jay, who comes here every night with her girlfriend. She says everyone here has a story similar to her own.
I think it was about 3 years ago when I came out to my dad and told him I was a lesbian. And he's from Africa, so he didn't want to deal with it and didn't think that was the proper way to go. And he asked me if I would want to be straight or gay, and if I was straight I could stay in the house, but if I was gay I would have to leave. So I chose to leave because I wouldn't want to lie to him about who I was, so I left.
After she left, Jay spent almost 2 years couch diving and in and out of shelters before finding a space in foster care. The rest of the crowd at the pier considers her lucky because she has a place to go other than a mainstream shelter. Many gay and transgender youth who seek refuge in the youth shelters find themselves vulnerable to violence and abuse from other residents. One 19-year-old who asked to remain anonymous explains.
Homosexuals that are placed in other youth-like shelters are in an environment where it's predominantly heterosexual, and that can be quite stressful. It's an environment where it's filled with hostility in a way. You can feel it in the air. You can literally feel it in the air. And the staff, they're not really conscious of what accommodations LGBTQ youth need, which is quite sad in a way.
Covenant House, the largest homeless youth shelter in the city, says it works to create a comfortable environment, but many LGBT youth say they still feel uneasy there. Because of this, some take other measures. Some engage in prostitution just so they have somewhere warm to sleep. Others stay on the streets, or as this teen told me, on the 14th Street Pier, where he spent many nights.
The official closing time for the pier is 1 a.m., but I would sneak back in and sleep in the children's park. It would be very cold, and bugs would eat you up and everything. These are marks on my arms because I was being eaten up by mosquitoes and whatnot. It's uncomfortable, but we need a place to stay.
Unfortunately, there aren't many places for LGBT youths to stay. Throughout all 5 boroughs, there are fewer than 100 beds in shelters specifically for LGBT young people. The Ali Fournier Center houses more than half of them. Director Carl Siciliano says he knows firsthand that the supply doesn't even skim the surface of the demand.
At the Ali Fournier Center, on any given night, we have 150 kids that we're turning away who are on a waiting list. There are just way too few resources. There are way too few beds. There are way too many kids. Hundreds of kids every night are stranded on the streets of our city.
And so comes the inevitable question. Who's responsible for taking care of these teens? Siciliano says, yes, the government needs to take responsibility, but he says other groups need to step up too.
That the LGBT community needs to be more aggressive about this issue, that there needs to be more of a sense of crisis within our community, that so many thousands of young people are being hurt and rejected by their families because of being gay. I mean, this is happening to these kids because it's gay, and really it's like the most horrible attack on the gay community in our time. And we have to recognize that these young people are a part of our community, and we have to be more aggressive about demanding that our politicians make sure that our tax dollars go to protect our kids.
A city-organized commission released a report this summer suggesting what more the city can do to help. Recommendations include a public awareness campaign on LGBT issues, improving health care services, offering support resources for families, and adding at least 200 regulated shelter beds for LGBT youth. However, since most of the recommendations cost money, city officials say it will be at least 5 years before solutions are implemented.
We do function in an unfortunate reality, and and that's the fiscal constraints of our budget. Not looking to push the budget to the point where families become homeless because they can't afford to pay our property taxes or live in the city. I think we're already pushing that.
That's the chair of the city's Youth Services Committee, Councilmember Lewis Fidler.
I've held over 14 hearings on this subject in the hope that mainstream media would start to cover it so people would think about it the way we thought about Willowbrook in the 70s and 80s, and say this is not tolerable in a civilized society. The problem is that the mainstream media has chosen not to cover those hearings, no matter how much we've tried, and so people still don't think about it. You got to think about it.
Fidler says if the public knew more about this, then maybe they would chip in funding too. But regardless of where the money comes from, experts say it has to come soon. Caitlin Ryan is the director of the Families Acceptance Project and specializes in studies about LGBT youth and family acceptance of homosexuality. She says once these young adults are out in the streets, it's essential to get them into safe spaces as soon as possible.
Well, one of the major problems is that when they are homeless as adolescents, it totally disrupts their education or any kind of ability to plan for the future, vocational or career development. So many of them end up not getting an education, and that already impacts their ability to live in society, to have a job. The longer they're out on the street, the more likely negative experiences and violence will happen to them, the more likely it will affect their mental health, so that they end up having serious mental health problems, substance abuse problems. They will have to likely engage in illegal activities to survive on the street, being unable to get a job or find a place to live or really fit into mainstream society. So the likelihood of staying on the street increases the longer that they're out there.
Back at Manhattan's Hudson River Park, tonight a few teens will leave to go to a shelter or foster home, but those are the lucky few. The majority will stay here without shelter or safe place to go until who knows when. For Fordham Conversations, I'm Sara Kugel.